Order. Good morning and welcome, colleagues, invited guests, and members of the general public who are following today's proceedings of the Standing Senate Committee on Banking, Trade and Commerce, either here in the room or listening via the web. My name is David Tkachuk, and I'm the chair of this committee. This morning marks our first meeting on Bill S-224, an act respecting payments made under construction contracts. The bill was read a first time in the Senate on April the 13th, 2016, and I'm pleased to welcome its sponsor, Senator Donald Plett from Manitoba, who is now also a member of our committee. Welcome, Senator Plett, and thank you for appearing before us today as the bill's sponsor, along with Mr. Banfay, a lawyer with McMillan LLP, appearing as an individual today. Please proceed with your opening remarks, and then we'll go to a question and answer session. And following this, we'll briefly suspend to welcome a second panel of witnesses on this bill. So thank you, and Senator Plett, please proceed.
Well, thank you very much, Chair, and thank you, colleagues, for this opportunity. Many of my remarks today, you may well have heard at least portions of that as I spoke to the bill in the Senate, and I will be repeating some of that, so I apologize for those of you who have heard this 2 or 3 times. As the chair has said, with me today is an experienced construction lawyer who is very instrumental in the drafting process, Mr. Geza Banfay. And he will be here to answer any legal or jurisdictional questions that may arise in the questions that you have. Again, it is a pleasure for me to be here today and to present to you a bill that has been a long time in the making. The chair said April 13th, 2016. As you may know, the biggest issue facing the construction industry in Canada today is the issue of delay in payment. It is difficult for those working in virtually any other industry to fathom not getting paid for completed work without any proper legal recourse. However, this has become the sad reality for trade contractors across the country. There are systemic delays in remitting payments down the subcontract chain, even when valid invoices have been submitted, where there is no dispute that the work has been performed according to the contract and where the progress claims have been certified. This problem is not unique to Canada. However, other jurisdictions have enacted legislation to counter systemic delays in making payments to subcontractors. Virtually all U.S. jurisdictions, including the federal government, have adopted prompt payment legislation in the public sector. The United Kingdom, Ireland, Australia, New Zealand have also enacted prompt payment legislation. It is Canada that is the outlier. What sets the construction industry apart from other industries is that the construction pyramid structure on large projects. In federal government work, the federal authority is the top of this pyramid. The federal authority tenders the construction work to a general contractor or prime contractor. This is the party who enters into the contract with the federal authority to complete the project. More often than not, the prime contractor will then subcontract various segments of the construction project to specialized trade contractors. Typically, these trade contractors perform upwards of 80% of the actual construction work. Also, on most of these projects, trade contractors either subcontract from a general contractor or they may subcontract from another trade contractor. As small and medium-sized business owners will understand, trade contractors' access to bank credit is limited and their dependence on cash flow is high. Trade contractors' revenues are subject to unpredictable delays without any flexibility on their payables. Payments to the Canada Revenue Agency and to the Workers' Compensation System must be paid monthly without delays. Wages need to be paid weekly or bi-weekly. Payment for materials and equipment rentals must be made within 15 to 30 days. The fundamental cause of the late payment problem is the unequal bargaining power between contractors and their subcontractors. Contractors will force subcontractors to accept late payments as part of the cost of doing business. Contractors can do this because they control the flow of the work. Most trade contractors depend for their survival on subcontracting either from a general contractor or another trade contractor. No contractor can afford to be struck from the bidders list. Public Works has recognized that there is indeed a problem and thus have tried a series of administrative measures in an attempt to solve the problem. But unfortunately, none of them have worked, as they do not get to the heart of the problem. For example, contractors are required by Public Works to submit a statutory declaration with each invoice swearing that all payment obligations have been met. There are two difficulties with this remedy. Firstly, these declarations are retrospective. They do not prevent future payment delays. Secondly, if a payment is withheld as a result of a dispute over performance, the statutory declaration can be submitted, since technically the withheld payment is not a required payment pending resolution of the performance dispute. Currently, if a contractor is not paid, they have absolutely no recourse. They cannot pull off the job. They cannot collect interest. Their hands are tied. They are some of the hardest working people in our country, and they are going bankrupt and losing their businesses. This cycle has to stop. The Canada Prompt Payment Act contains measures that will finally put an end to this systemic problem when it comes to federal construction work. The bill stipulates that the government institution must make progress payments to a contractor for construction work on a monthly basis or at shorter intervals provided for in the construction contract. Likewise, the contractor must pay the subcontractor, and the subcontractor must pay any subsequent contractor on or before the 20th day following the latter of the last day of the monthly payment period or the receipt of the payment application. The Act also accounts for milestone payments, where if a general contractor enters into a contract with the federal government that authorizes milestone payments rather than progress payments, written notice of any milestone payments must be communicated to all parties down the contractual chain. In my view, the most significant provision proposed in this legislation is the right for unpaid contractors to suspend work. The absence of this provision has been raised with me time and time again by small business trade contractors. This is an important recourse for trade contractors who have not been paid, and I am thrilled that this right will now be explicit upon passage of this legislation. In addition to the right to terminate a contract or the ability to collect interest on late payment. The bill also provides for a comprehensive dispute resolution process as well as the right to information for contractors and subcontractors involved in any dispute resolution. Most construction work that happens in Canada occurs outside of federal projects, meaning that this legislation will only solve a part of the problem. However, provinces are moving forward on implementing similar legislation. The Reynolds Report in Ontario on this topic has recommended that the province enact comprehensive legislation. I was thrilled to see that the recommendations of the Commission largely mirror the proposals in this legislation. Ontario and Quebec have both committed to introducing prompt payment legislation in the spring of 2017. When the United States enacted the legislation federally, it did not take long for the individual states to follow suit, and it is my hope that enacting this legislation will have a similar ripple effect on the Canadian provinces, meaning every construction worker in Canada will be paid on time for the work that they have completed. Colleagues, this is a non-partisan issue. People should be paid for work that they have completed, and they should be paid on time. This is the biggest problem facing the construction industry in Canada, and we finally have the opportunity to fix it. Let's stand up for small business owners and hard-working Canadians in the construction industry. Before I conclude, I want to point out that since tabling this bill, I have worked with the National Trade Contractors Coalition of Canada to clarify language in a couple of areas. And I will be submitting before clause by clause, so that you have them on time, some very minor amendments that really clarify some of the wording in the bill. Those amendments do not change the substance of the bill, but simply clarify a few provisions to ensure certainty in their application. As I said, these amendments will be distributed to members in advance of clause by clause. Chair, those are my remarks, and I look forward to answering any questions.